Welcome again. Good morning. This is a meeting of the Portland Utility Board, and my name is Karen Williams. I am the co-chair of the Portland Utility Board, and we will officially call the meeting to order. Under Portland City Code and state law, the Portland Utility Board is holding this meeting electronically. Board members and relevant city staff are attending remotely or by phone, and the city has made it available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast. The meeting is being recorded. The public will have an opportunity to provide comments during the public comment portion of the agenda and can also provide written testimony to the board by emailing utilityboard@portlandoregon.gov. PUB believes and acts on anti-racist principles. In our meeting spaces and interactions with PUB, while every person has the right to share their personal perspective, we stand against wrongful conduct, particularly any conduct that's targeted toward people that are made vulnerable by systemic inequities. This means stepping up as a community when there's wrongful conduct and fostering a space of learning and growth. We put these principles into action by speaking up and speaking out. Each person is empowered to maintain the culture of the Portland Utility Board, and we focus on the impacted individual or population, condemning the conduct, but not the person. Amy will go through our meeting participation guidelines.
Thank you, Karen. My name is Amy Archer-Masters, and I'll quickly run through the guidelines. Please state your name before you speak, and if appropriate, the name of the person that you're addressing or that you're addressing the group. The chat box is only viewable by the hosts, the PUB staff, Eliza and myself, so please limit any chats to technical and logistical issues, including signing up for public comment, asking for technical assistance, or reminding us if you've been waiting to speak and have not been called on. The raise hand function is primarily used by the board. The co-host may lower your hand once you've begun speaking, just to maintain the flow of the conversation. During public comment periods, the public can also raise their hand and you'll be called on when appropriate. If you're connecting by phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. Videos may be turned on when speaking if desired. It's not required. Please mute your microphone when not speaking. Members of the public will be muted except when giving public comment. And if you're connecting by phone, you may need to press *6 to mute and unmute yourself. As mentioned, the public comment will be taken during the portion early in the meeting. You can chat with PUB staff or raise your hand during that public comment period. It's also available just prior to any formal board vote after a motion has been made and seconded by board members. As mentioned, this meeting is being recorded. I'll pass it back to you, Kim.
So we have not unusual, a packed agenda today. And after our disclosure of communications, we'll have a public comment period and then a presentation from a number of BES staff and managers who are going to present on some foundational drivers as in BES, as well as some information about the Portland Watershed Management Plan. And then we have some action items and some decisional items we need to take. We need to have a discussion and reach a decision on our co-chairs and nominate up to 2 people to participate in the BES director interviews. We need to make a decision about that. And then we will have if all goes well, we'll have a few minutes at the end for some announcements and a quick look at our next meeting on February 7th, or sorry, January 3rd. Getting ahead of myself there. So with our disclosure of communications today, I am going to ask, can we do this a little bit differently? Please just, if you have a disclosure, please just state the nature of the disclosure, with whom you interacted, and the topic of the interaction or the conversation, but let's not present content. Let's hold any content to the announcements part of the meeting at the end. And I will do my darndest to make sure that we have at least a few minutes at the end for announcements. So if I can ask you to follow those suggested guidelines. Teresa, please go ahead.
Hi, this is board member Teresa Huang, and I met with a couple of BES staff members on 2 occasions. One is for the N2R grants application, and one is to sit in their Racial Equity Committee meeting. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Tom Lipton.
Good morning, everybody. I had a conversation with Farshad regarding the Tryon Creek project and the Tryon Creek wastewater treatment plant project. And yeah, it was a good conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. No other disclosures? Very good. Thank you. Let's look at our public comment. Is there anyone today wishing to make a public comment? Either
We
submitted
do
ahead
have-
of time or right now?
We have two people. First, we have Dee White and then Lori.
All right, Dee. Yeah, Dee, please go ahead and please do limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'll try my best. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
I gave this testimony yesterday at the city council meeting, and I'm just going to present it again because I'd like to ask the Water Bureau to respond, as Wheeler or the Water Bureau did not. It's on agenda item 1058 that read, accept the chief procurement officer's recommendation for contract to Ferguson Waterworks for waterworks supplies not to exceed $20 million. In the impact statement on this agenda item, towards the very end of the impact statement, it reads, the contract currently in use, which is to Ferguson Waterworks, the same contractor, has been instrumental in supplying parts to the Willamette River Crossing project. The Willamette River Crossing project will build an earthquake resilient water line deep under the Willamette River. End of comment in there. Last week on December 7th, the Willamette Week came out with an article entitled Plans for an Oft Delayed Drinking Water Pipeline Under the Willamette Have Quietly Changed. It reads, the Portland Water Bureau has worked for 12 years to add a new pipeline to carry drinking water to the west side. The budget has ballooned. Bureau officials won't say what it is, and a project that was supposed to be finished in 2022, this year, will instead return to the Portland City Council in 2023 with a new price tag and a new plan. The Bureau will also tell councilors a key piece of information that hasn't previously been reported, that the plan the City Council originally approved won't work. Goes on to read, here's a little history in the article. In 2015, the council agreed to suspend competitive bidding requirements and green light a project with a $57 million price tag. In 2018, the Bureau came back to the council with a new budget for the already approved project, $90 million. The plan, according to City Council presentation from that year, had been refined. Then when the contractor for the project started test drilling in 2020, it reported to the Water Bureau that it found the rock deep under the river was impenetrable. The chief engineer stated, we have established what we believe was a viable technology, Inman says, but what we learned was that technology would no longer work. So this new plant will totally reverse the position the Water Bureau has held for the past 6 years. The Water Bureau hopes to update the City Council on its plan in the next 3 or 4 months. Critics of the project, including myself, seriously doubt that this pipeline as envisioned will meet the goal of providing water to the west side. So I'd like to go back to this impact statement that reads, the current contract currently in use has been instrumental in supplying parts to the Willamette River Crossing project. What I'd like to ask the Water Bureau, this project is not even off the ground, and yet they've actively been using parts, instrumental in supplying parts. This contract, and it's going to be the same supplier as the last contract. How is the public going to reconcile this waste of money? Where do these parts go? And again, how is this not a waste of money? I'd like to ask the Water Bureau that question. Thank you.
Okay, next up was LJ.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hello to Pub. I haven't been here for a while, and I wanted to thank, just by starting by thanking Pub members for dedicating their time and energy and questions. Keep asking. I think this is incredibly important for the public. Well, this has been a frustrating year. In case you missed it, please read OPB's important January 8th, 2022 article on the Water Bureau's lead exceedance. There are national articles too, but you may have missed these. Trying to get more transparency on this, residents have instead gotten run around this year by Bureau staff when asked the most important questions about the Water Bureau, far exceeding their water lead action level. And personally, despite being persistent, the Water Bureau did not answer some of my most important questions. Maybe the Water Bureau will answer them if Pub members ask. So here they are. Here's just a few, actually, just a few. First, there is no public information about your about about the Water Bureau's so-called free filters program. Why not? When after much runaround, Jamie finally responded, quote, "There is no burden on our customers to contact us," quote, unquote. So my question is, how can customers, especially those vulnerable to lead exposure, find out about free lead prevention if the Water Bureau isn't advertising it? And also I see Cecilia's here. I'm wondering if she, after this, if she can tell us how much has been spent so far on the free filters. That'd be great. Cecilia, thank you. My next question is, why aren't the most vulnerable being prioritized for free filters? And of course, that would be pregnant women, infants, especially on formula, bottle-fed formula, children up to age 2, really under 6, says CDC, but up to age 2 when brains are rapidly developing. Third, can we hear from Water Bureau corrosion control engineers? We haven't heard anything from any of them, despite having attended, 6 of them attended a meeting and said nothing. Fourth, why is the Bureau putting out misstatements and misleading images which tell actually, you know, mischaracterize safe tap water? For example, Director Solmer and Water Commissioner Maps assured us, quote, "Our drinking water is safe," unquote, just a few months after alarming lead levels. And fifth, this is for Director Solmer, and I don't think she is here today. 2 years ago, she said that she had no need for a materials inventory. That's you know, all the pipes and infrastructure that's underground, since there were quote, "no lead pipes to map," unquote. But it turns out EPA requires utilities do an inventory of what is hidden underground. The Bureau, in fact, the Bureau broke its all-time record for feet of pipe replaced in a year between 2020 and 2021. Here's my question. Have you been documenting the pipe materials that you found? And then, well, finally, many more questions remain unanswered, but here's the last one. You didn't use Portland Water Bureau did not use the $727 million WIFIA loan to remove lead infrastructure in the city system, just as Senator Merkley intended with the WIFIA that he proposed. Now, there's President Biden's bipartisan infrastructure law to remove lead pipes and service lines. So here's the question. Why have you not yet applied for this important funding to replace pipes and service lines connected to homes? And I hope Director Solmer will please explain to Pub, since the Water Bureau has them, how EPA defines, quote, lead service lines. And one last incredibly important note, it turns out that the BIL, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, are grants and forgivable loans when specifically used for those disproportionately impacted by lead exposure. And that here would be communities of color and low income. Thanks again. And again, if Cecilia is here, I would love to hear how much has been spent on free filters.
Karen, I think you might be muted.
Thank you. I was. Thank you, LJ, for those comments. We do not have time on our agenda today for any responses from Water Bureau, so we won't be doing that. I do want to respond to a couple, actually both comments, or both commenters, and just really my comments go to the board that regarding the Willamette River crossing, I think that is indeed something that we probably should be receiving some more information about. And I would invite you all fellow members to be thinking about when you would like to fit that into our upcoming agendas and our upcoming meetings. And on the second topic, I really just want to remind pub members and actually some newer members, new this year, might not be aware of the pretty in-depth policy analysis work that Julia DeGraw and Sarah Messier did regarding lead in the spring of last year. And that we have made some recommendations on the city's lead policies in our budget, not our budget, in our annual work plan, annual report and work plan letters that we submitted in October of this last year. So I would invite you to review those and think about, again, as we're looking at our budget work in the early part of 2023, what items we might want to bring back and focus on and ask questions about regarding lead policy as we look ahead to the 2023-4 budget. So thank you very much again for public comment. And Julia, did you have something else you wanted to respond there?
Just super quickly, for all the new pub members, I definitely encourage you to review that lead fact sheet, or like two-pager that we developed as a really good background. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions. I'd love to talk with you. And I also try to proactively reach out to each of you sometime in the next few weeks. But again, don't hesitate to reach out to me after you check out that document.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks again. I know Sarah's not here today, but thanks for your work on that, and to Sarah as well from last year. All right, so moving on from public comment, let's get to our presentation. We're already behind schedule. I'm sorry. Rachel, and I see Rachel. So Rachel, Kristen, and Caitlin. It looks like Rachel, maybe, are you doing, or at least kicking off the presentation today on the?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Thank
very
you.
good. Please go ahead.
So I'm just going to call up the presentation and you'll let me know if it's coming through for you.
Okay, yes, we can see it.
Great. Okay. So good morning, Co-Chair Williams and members of the pub. My name is Rochelle Altman. I work as a project manager and policy advisor in the strategy group at Environmental Services. And I'm here today to to brief you on a recent BES strategic initiative to identify what we are calling Bureau foundational drivers. And that's a term that I will define in just a few minutes. Today, I'll give you some context for the initiative, the goals, the definition that we use, definition of foundational driver that was used to create our list, what we're calling our inventory of foundational drivers. I'll share our vision of the distinction between foundational drivers and other important requirements and influences that can and do shape BES's work. And then I'll share how the first iteration of our foundational drivers inventory is being used by staff. So that's what I'll cover about foundational drivers generally. And then I would like to address a specific question that BES received from the pub regarding the Portland Watershed Management Plan, whether it's a driver, and if not, why not? before diving into the particulars of this initiative, I know some of the pub members are newer, and so wanted to quickly flash an overview of the different portfolios of work to remind you of the breadth of functions and services that we provide to the community. We have our wastewater resource recovery functions, collection system pumping. We manage the city's sanitary and combined collection system. We manage stormwater in the city. We provide a variety of restoration and remediation services to improve and protect aquatic and terrestrial natural features. We provide workspaces and grounds to support Bureau operations. And then finally, there are a variety of broad Bureau administrative support functions that provide support to the other portfolios. I also want to make sure we ground our conversation today in the Bureau's mission and vision and values that were adopted as part of the 2018 strategic plan and continue to guide the Bureau in how we respond to our foundational drivers. The recent Foundational Drivers Initiative certainly did not alter these mission, vision, value statements. As I know you have a good sense of, there are many, many external influences that shape BES's work and our investment strategy. We, of course, have constraints on the use of our revenue in the form of our charter, the Anderson litigation that provided further guidance about how the charter needs to be applied in BES's work. We also have bond covenants, which restrict how we use our revenue. There are regulations at state, federal, and local levels, litigation that we are constantly tracking around the country to be able to proactively respond to anticipated changes and respond in a predictable way that is a sound use of Bureau resources for our customers. There's also a variety of federal, state, and local policies and guidance, as well as city asset management and financial policies that guide our work. There are community values and expectations, and our sister bureaus have many priorities, plans, and actions that need to shape our work, or at least be considered as we are taking action. The purpose of the Foundational Drivers Inventory Initiative was to create a list of our foundational drivers, which was called for by our strategic plan implementation, our transition report. And the purpose of this initiative was to help BES be clear about why we exist and what our core substantive functions and responsibilities are as a sewer and stormwater utility, as distinct from the key responsibilities and functions of our sister bureaus. Both resource constraints and city financial and asset management policies, those are all calling on BES to set clearer priorities than we have in the past. And so we are trying to be responsive. At the same time, I want to emphasize, you'll hear me say this a few times in the presentation, that the foundational drivers inventory is just one set of influences that help BES decide what to focus our limited resources on. So at last, here's our definition of foundational driver that we used. They are the externally produced documents and influences that assign, govern, or guide at a very high level our Bureau's core substantive responsibilities and functions as a sewer and stormwater utility. Linked in this document and in the pub onboarding materials that you received, I believe, a few weeks ago, there's a link to a slightly more technical definition, but this gets at the core of what we're trying to capture, the very high level influences that are guiding our substantive work as a sewer and stormwater utility. There are 20 items on the list that I will share in a few minutes, and you will see that there are some that are binding, and there are others that are non-binding, what we call our strategic foundational drivers. And this was a list that was approved by a BES leadership governance committee that reviews and endorses key products that come out of the strategy and integrated planning group. So given that we have 20 items on our list of foundational drivers, there are of course many requirements, commitments, standards, policies, plans that don't fall within the definition of foundational driver. And so you won't see them on that list, but we know they are things that BES still needs to consider. And I will include examples of the types of things that fall into that category. The foundational drivers, they are trying to really define why BES exists, the high level justification for our core functions. And that's as opposed to the other items, which often get into much more of the implementation details of how we do our work, how we respond to our foundational drivers, which are generally the highest 1 to 2 layers of regulations or external guidance on a particular topic. So this slide gives you a flavor of the types of things that are those important influences that aren't at that highest level. So they're not foundational drivers, but they are clearly things we know we have to pay attention to and consider and have shape our work. So we have a variety of internally produced documents that guide us as we respond to the foundational drivers, things like our strategic plan, our equity plan. We have a variety of infrastructure plans, long-range plans that guide our work. There are also many regulations that don't provide that highest level layer of guidance about our core responsibilities and functions. So things like details about how we do our work found in federal pretreatment regulations, Portland City Code Title 17 and related administrative rules that we implement, design standards, worker safety regulations. There are then a variety of regulations that govern our byproducts, like our treatment plants, air and solid waste discharge permits. And then there are many laws that influence how we provide our support functions, such as finance, accounting, labor laws. I want to note that this focus definition that we used and the resulting list of 20 foundational drivers, that was in response to our extensive bureau-wide stakeholder engagement, where we heard from the primary users in integrated planning, asset management, and portfolio management, that they really needed a focused definition and list to make this useful. If everything is at an extreme, if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority. And we're already hearing from them that 20 foundational drivers, they hoped I would convey to you that 20 foundational drivers is still it's a lot. They're managing, but even 20, it's a lot to analyze and assess, and adding many additional items to a list that that less clearly fall within the definition of foundational driver could really hinder their ability to do effective analysis and their ability to make sound recommendations about how the Bureau should prioritize resources. Again, BES does continue to invest resources in responding to other regulations, permits, policies, plans, community interests that aren't foundational drivers, because the drivers are just one set of influences. On this slide and the 2 slides that follow, you'll see our 20 foundational drivers categorized into those issued by federal entities, state, and local. We have our Clean Water Act, the MS4 permit, and associated state and federal regulations, total maximum daily loads also issued under the Clean Water Act that apply to the city, our treatment plants, wastewater discharge permits, CERCLA, Superfund, the Natural Resources Damage Assessment, which is a component of CERCLA, the Endangered Species Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, our UIC permit, and related groundwater protection rules. The state level, we have an IGA related to Portland Harbor source control between the city and DEQ. There are state environmental cleanup laws found in the Oregon revised statutes. An IGA between the city of Portland and DEQ governing the Columbia Slough sediment cleanup. And then the Oregon Resilience Plan issued by the state legislature, guidance regarding how to become more seismically resilient. At the city level, we have our Portland City Charter, Title 3 of City Code, Chapter 3.13, which establishes BES and our mission and lays out our broad regulatory authorities as a bureau. There is ADM 18.30, which is the citywide racial equity goals and strategies, the 2035 comprehensive plan, council adopted city core values, a joint City of Portland and Multnomah County climate change preparation strategy, which is focused on climate adaptation, and then the 2019 Portland Insight Survey, which is being a new iteration will be coming out in, I believe it's this coming year. I know they're doing engagement as we speak. This slide is giving you a flavor of the highly regulatory environment that we're working in. And on the left two columns, those are examples of some of our foundational drivers that lead us to turn around and create regulations that we enforce or programs that we provide to the community in response to our foundational drivers. And I do want to note a few subtleties that might not be obvious from the slide. Of course, not all of our foundational drivers have permits associated with them. And even when they do, our foundational drivers and associated permits, they're not always very prescriptive. So we do sometimes have significant discretion in how we respond to our foundational drivers. Another challenge, sometimes opportunity, is that foundational drivers are not always crystal clear. And so there is some interpretation that is required at times. And our approach to responding to foundational drivers appropriately changes over time at times due to emerging science, litigation, or changes in policy or interpretation by the state and federal agencies that are enforcing the foundational drivers against the city. Turning to how we are piloting use of this first iteration, what we're calling Foundational Drivers Inventory version 1.0. Our portfolio management teams and asset management program and our new integrated planning group, they are using the inventory in their analyses and work. And I share some examples below and on the following slide. So they're using the inventory in portfolio management analysis and their recommended prioritization of bureau activities and resources. The integrated planning group is evolving their business process and tools to make sure that their key staff are connecting with regulatory staff at critical points in the integrated planning process. The integrated planning group is also using the foundational drivers in risk assessment when they document the reasons for selecting and planning for a particular priority area. The planning group continues to refine the regulatory risk threshold that they apply in their risk assessment when they're prioritizing risk for the Bureau to then move on to identifying solutions to address those priority risk areas. There are also planning efforts to test development and use of planning success criteria. And some of those criteria are kind of what they're referring to as must-have success criteria based on the foundational drivers. And then there are other influences that are providing nice-to-have success criteria. And then finally, the asset management program, which I know presented to you in the last few months, they are planning to incorporate the foundational drivers into their prototype strategic asset management plan that they are planning to update this coming spring. Next steps include continuing piloting the use of the inventory for some months by those primary users. Then the project team will consider revisions to the inventory. Also, we'll consider what tools could be developed to facilitate application in Bureau resourcing and other work. And then we'll consider what broader employee engagement and training regarding the foundational drivers inventory would be useful and welcome to employees. Turning now to the Portland Watershed Management Plan. As a reminder, it's binding city policy developed by BES and adopted by council in 2005. And its goals and objectives were reaffirmed by council in 2012. And this document establishes an integrated approach to watershed management by adopting the 4 goals listed here that support watershed health. The plan implements a variety of higher level laws, regulations, and guidance. And so it really provides the city with an integrated compliance strategy to meet those highest level requirements that many of which are our foundational drivers. I also want to highlight that the Portland Watershed Management Plan preceded the creation of BES's new integrated planning group that was created with our Bureau reorganization in 2020. And that new group was designed to better integrate a holistic watershed approach into the development of solutions for identified risks. And so this new group really complements and can support the goals of the Portland Watershed Management Plan. When we looked at the plan and looked across all of our requirements and policies that apply and this plan and other plans, we found that, like the other types of things listed here, the Portland Watershed Management Plan is a critical document that guides us, but it guides us as we respond to the higher level things that are our foundational drivers. And so we found it wouldn't be consistent to classify the Portland Watershed Management Plan as a foundational driver if many other things like those listed here were not classified as a foundational driver. And again, it's trying to strike the right balance between it is an inherently gray area. Where do you cut it off? But that's where we decided having a list that was closer to 20 than several hundred items is where it could really be an effective guide to help BES make some difficult decisions around resourcing and prioritizing our dollars and our staff. So things that similarly were not classified as foundational drivers include things like our pretreatment and biosolids regulations, federal and state, our air and solid waste permits that BES holds related to our air and solid waste discharges, health and safety, worker health and safety requirements, Title 17 and related administrative rules, our strategic plan, our equity plan, and the variety of other plans developed, including our combined and sanitary systems plan, some others listed here, Johnson Creek Restoration Plan, also adopted by council. And so we do continue to believe that it is consistent to the PWMP, like these many other things, are critical implementation guidance as we respond to those highest level layers of things that are our foundational drivers. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take questions about any part of the presentation.
Thanks a lot, Rachel. So we have, we're doing not terrible on time. We have, let's say, about 8 minutes for questions. I'm sure that won't be enough. So please know that you can always submit questions to pub staff, and they'll get to BES and we'll get you some answers if we don't have time today. So why don't we just dive in to folks that have questions right now, and let's turn to Bob.
Thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Two questions. One, were the foundational drivers in this structure ever presented to the pub? And if not, why not? Because this really seems like the kind of stuff that you would want to interact with the pub with and get feedback. And the second question does pertain to the Watershed Management Plan. I was on that stakeholder advisory committee, actually chaired it for a while. It was a long time in the production. And I understand there are gray areas, but that was supposed to, it's binding city policy. So it's an external document, even though it's produced in BES. So it fits your criteria. And it was a document that was designed to integrate all of those different federal mandates and state mandates into a coherent whole. So it actually sits above them, not beneath them. So I'm surprised that it didn't make it in for that reason.
So I think to answer your first question, so we are working iteratively, and we see this as something we're piloting. And so we're coming to you, early in the process. It was just endorsed for the Bureau to start trying to use it and to get some early input. And so this, and in addition, leadership doesn't view it as changing policy, or there's a long list of things that aren't on the foundational drivers that they're mandatory requirements. And so I think it's kind of the idea of maybe where someone a district attorney's office, they have authority to enforce all kinds of things. They sometimes have priorities. And so here we're proposing some priorities. The Bureau leadership wanted to be transparent, as they are needing to make difficult decisions in real time about what they believe is appropriate for the Bureau to focus on. If they can't do everything, what are they focusing on? And so this is all quite new. And so we view this as coming to you early in the process. We're just piloting. Again, staff are just starting to use it and even figure out what is the right kind of format. And I didn't share, there's a spreadsheet that kind of captures information about each driver, some administrative history, and different categories of portfolios of Bureau work that might be relevant to each driver. And so we are testing this out and seeing, is this even the right format? I know my supervisor manager, Kristen Aycock, is here. I don't know if you have anything else to add on anything else to add on this, but that's my understanding of, we do feel it's early in the process that we're coming to you, that we're piloting this new thing, and it's not set in stone. It's very iterative work that we're doing, trying to not have it be perfect and final before we start using something. So that's the first question. I'll pause there if Kristen or Caitlin want to say anything in response to the first question.
I don't have anything to add. I think that was
okay. And then to the second question, I think we're in everything you said, other than whether it should be classified as a foundational driver. I think everyone at the Bureau I've heard is in agreement that yes, it's binding city policy. It was adopted by council, like our Portland City Code, our administrative rules, which are also adopted. Well, the administrative rules aren't adopted by council, but Portland City Code certainly is adopted by council. Some of our other plans, like Johnson Creek Restoration Plan, are adopted by council. Certainly our administrative rules get vetted by our commissioner and go out for public comment. So those things are also not foundational drivers. And I guess I hadn't, as I was part of this project and hearing staff, I always heard staff talk about the PWMP as a tool, as strategies we're using to think holistically and not in a silo as we're trying to meet these federal and state regulations. And so to date, my sense is most staff think of it as a tool to meet the higher level things. As I heard you saying, you kind of thought of it in the reverse, that it is a higher level component than the federal and state regulations. And so I guess I would say BES staff have consistently been thinking of it in a different way, more as an implementation tool as we're responding to those other things. We have discretion in how we respond to those regulations, and we want to make sure to develop multi-objective solutions that leverage opportunities to comply with multiple regulations. And so we've been thinking it more as an implementation tool. And I believe Caitlin is still on the call. She's certainly been more involved in PWMP development and use than me, so if she had something to add. I would welcome that.
Yeah, and I think, Rochelle, probably, I think there's, within the Bureau, there are people who think about it as above and people who think about it as implementation. So I think there's two camps. They're not really camps, but different ways to apply it. I think at the end of the day, we know that if we were to just strictly comply with the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act and all of our NPDES permits, our cleanup rules, we are not going to get to healthy watersheds. They are too narrow in their jurisdictional approaches. And so the PWMP really helps us understand how do we actually serve the purposes of those rules more broadly. And so that's where I think we've really tried to pull it together to say, how are we, it's not just that we're taking our permits and doing, for example, industrial discharge and elimination, detection and elimination, but that is there to serve specific parameters of priority pollutants in our watershed that are having an impact on fish and wildlife, are having an impact on community. And so really taking that step back and asking, are we implementing these things in a way that achieves those purposes better? And but it's always a work in progress. But if we were to just implement the regulations themselves, we are always going to be behind. We're always going to be chasing the next regulation. And so having the PWMP there as sort of that integration helps us make sure that we're staying along with or even ahead of the compliance curve.
Thanks, Caitlin. And I would also add that the city's comp plan, of course, that is listed as the foundational driver and has, just to make sure everyone's aware, has several chapters that are very focused on environment and watershed health and have some of those higher level goals that came after the PWMP, but certainly seem informed by the PWMP and provide these higher citywide goals that then are also something that BES is responding to as we are implementing the PWMP.
Thank you, Rachel, Caitlin, and Kristen for your presentation, for being here to answer some questions. For pub members, what I would invite you, this is quite a lot and quite dense information, obviously, that we all just received. And I would invite you to think about how we actually requested this information to have some context so that we could, as we are drilling into the budget in a few months or a few weeks, that we have some context to understand the big picture that is kind of influencing and driving the Bureau's sort of decisions about where they're investing and sort of long-term planning, and how this budget fits into, or how an element of this budget, right, fits into the bigger picture. So that was kind of the reason that we asked for this type of a presentation. And I'd invite you, as you're thinking about any questions you have about what you heard today, to be sort of thinking ahead about how you'll use the information to make some pretty particular either recommendations, or have what you need, let me put it that way, to be able to make pretty particular recommendations on the budget that you'll, again, the budget elements that we'll be seeing shortly. Yeah. So thanks again to BES for being here and making the presentation. Let's move on to, I believe, our co-chair, or is it BES comes next? Okay, co-chair decision. So I have asked pub staff to facilitate this part of the meeting, since it seemed a little inappropriate and awkward for me to facilitate a discussion about something that I'm putting my hand up for. So Bob, did you have something before we move on to that?
Yeah, just before we move on, I just want to express a little bit of frustration that we keep, this was an important topic. We had time for 2 questions. They were both mine. So I apologize to everyone else, but we've got to leave more time for questions and answers after these things. I know we can come back to them, but I think having a long, complicated presentation and then having very short time for questions and answers just is not functional if we really got to fulfill our role. So I want to capture that because it kind of keeps happening.
Yeah, thanks, Bob, and I totally appreciate that that feedback, and hear you loud and clear. And I do want to be clear that this was the beginning of a conversation and questions on these topics. This was not a one-off. This was meant to really start the conversation. So yeah, more questions are welcome to pub staff, but we can, quite frankly, pick up additional questions that we have in January as, again, as we start looking at some of how what we just heard gets reflected in, what the Bureau is asking for in their budget. So your questions and anyone else's questions on the topic there's still time for those, and they are still most welcome. And I would say they are still absolutely necessary for us to do our work. But I hear you loud and clear on what you said. So thanks.
This is Eliza, and I will just facilitate you all through this formal decision. So since I sent Reed ahead, Tom decided to withdraw his name. So that means there's 2 people able and willing to serve the 6-month term from January 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2023. So the formal procedure we follow is each of them gets a few minutes. You don't need to take them all. To just make a formal statement, and then one of you can make a motion, and the motion just needs to clearly state the person you're nominating and the term, and you can do it simultaneously, and then we need a formal vote. And then after that, pub staff will work with the commissioner staff to get that pub's recommendation to the mayor and commissioner in charge who make the formal appointment. And with that, if it's okay, Robin, I'll put you on the spot to make your little statement.
Yeah, give me just a second. There we go. I couldn't quite see my own face on the screen. Still can't, no worries. Yeah, I have a little bit of a speech. Really, I went over this with the pub members that I was able to have a conversation with. But for those that I wasn't able to contact, I still want to continue those conversations. But yeah, I'm running for the co-chair position because I really want to shift how we are using our time at meetings and how we interact with the bureaus and their staff. In my time as a pub member, I have seen, unfortunately, the bureau presentations really taking up a lot of our very limited time together. And, we did give some feedback earlier in the year, and it felt like we were modifying that presentation balance a few months back, but it doesn't quite feel like we've pushed for enough change yet. And just being mindful, if we only have 3 hours a month together, these bureau presentations should really not be more than 1/3 of our time together. We've been getting presentations beforehand. That is helpful, but we also need to be having shorter PowerPoint presentations in general. We need to have these PowerPoints, 5 to 7 slides, kind of telling us the who, what, where, when, and how of the situation at hand, and making sure that every presenter really comes to us, is able to tell us up front why they're coming to us and what they need from us. And that way we can always be goal oriented in our conversations. And as Bob was mentioning, I also have an interest in kind of shifting how we do our Q&As, because we need to be having in-depth conversations in the meeting and not just afterwards. Myself included, it often feels like we have a lot of run-on questions that can be informative, but kind of limit our actual ability to engage, especially when we do have sometimes lengthy responses to our questions, which is good, but still, of course, takes up time.
and just trying to figure out a way to really navigate the Q&A. And that way, maybe we're specifically just asking one question per hand raised, trying to be as concise, as direct as possible, perhaps limiting how long the Bureau's responses can be, just like a couple of minutes. And just trying to really support follow-up questions, and just recognize that there's like 11 of us. And so if we can use our time more wisely, we can be more effective. And, you know, I also want the public commenters to feel heard in the conversation. And when they bring their 3-minute testimony to us, it kind of feels like we hear them and then we're like, all right, on with the next one. And many board members have expressed that they would like to not only address the community in general more, but actually feel like we are receptive to public comments at the time, and outwardly engaging the community through like community and pub events. Something that also came up is, you know, I kind of want to change how we're addressing bureaus and their staff. It kind of feels like we're a little bit too nice. And it's not that we need to be adversarial, but it feels like we're a bit too much of a rubber stamp. And we're, you know, pub is not a stop along the way to their destination. We are very much part of the journey to get there. And we need to be mindful, of course, not to be too adversarial, but we need to recognize that the people that come into this meeting don't always have the best interest of the community in mind, because they are working within limitations, legal, city limitations, cultural viewpoints. And you know, on the other hand, we are a board of community members, and we must absolutely be willing to push back against certain bureau viewpoints, and just be more willing to challenge assertions. And that way, when people come to us, they come correct, and they know that we're not here just as a rubber stamp, and that we care, and that we will ask the tough questions. Lastly, I do think that we would benefit from extending our meetings maybe once a quarter, and just really needing our pub members to be more willing to create or join subcommittees, or even just work in the two off pairs, because it really feels like when we connect and we're doing work just as 2 pub members, that it's quick, it's more focused, and we're able to get a lot more work done. And I think that has been effectively shown through the reports in the last 2 years that have come forward. And then, yeah, just kind of want to heighten communication. I know that Karen, the co-chair, had mentioned that she had really wanted to increase communication in her previous term. And that was something that I was really interested in coming into this role, and just wanting to increase engagement between members. Like in between meetings, we should be having phone calls. If you feel comfortable, let's have a lunch together. And that way we can navigate the virtual space while also working together and feeling that sort of community connection that is somewhat limited virtually. Yes. So vote for me. Thank you.
So Eliza, I'll go ahead with my statement if that's okay. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. So I am interested in serving as a co-chair, at least for the next 6 months. And the reason I'd like to continue this work is because I enjoy the challenge, and I enjoy always having opportunities for improvement to work on. And I do particularly like the opportunity that I have had the last about 1.5 years to help my fellow pub members reach decisions, reach decisions and make recommendations that I do believe have impact, and do make for better local government policy and better service to and protection of our communities. So that is really challenging work, and I quite enjoy, I guess, the challenge of having a role in bringing that together. So so I'd like to continue, and I do also have some ideas and things that I would like to try for more substantive engagement and deliberation. And many of them are ideas that you all have suggested, so I'm certainly not claiming them, but both better use of our virtual environment, as well as some of the things that we have already done successfully, like the smaller project groups and sort of in-depth policy analysis that a couple of folks will do and then bring back. But I look forward to continuing to work with you all, and I hope that you would support another 6-month term of my co-chairpersonship, and appreciate your support.
This is Eliza, and if anybody feels ready to make a motion, you could now. If you feel like you need to discuss a little bit, you can. There is a period of discussion after the motion. So I've got a hand raised. Tom?
So just so I'm clear, so if I make a motion, we still have the opportunity to discuss the candidates. So
Yep.
I'm ready to make a motion, but I don't want to make it if others would rather not. But
I think it would be great for you to go ahead and make a motion,
okay.
because
I
we'll see.
would like to make a motion that we vote for both Karen and Robin, and I guess a little explanations. I think they're both qualified and have motivation to try and help us do the best work we can, and I support both of them. So that's my motion. Was that correctly structured? I don't know.
That sounds great, Tom. I'll add for the record that you're making a motion to the board recommend Robin Castro and Karen Williams for a 6-month term to begin January 1st, 2023 and end June 30th, 2023.
That's correct. Thank you.
And is there a second?
I second. It's Julia.
Thank you. And then now is a chance for discussion. And I'm not seeing a hand, so I think what I'll do is move it to public comment. Is there any public comment? And then in which case I will move it to vote. And Karen and Robin, you can vote if you want, but it may feel odd. And I think we have enough so that you could abstain if you so choose. So I will call on Karen.
I will choose to abstain. Thank you.
Robin Castro, voting member. I will absolutely vote for myself and Karen for this role. Thank you.
Heather?
Hello, I definitely vote for Karen and Robin to both serve.
Teresa?
Hi, this is Teresa Huang, and yes, I would vote for both of them. Thank you.
And Tom?
Yes, I like my motion and I vote for both of them.
And Bob?
Yes, I vote for Karen and Robin, both.
Julia?
I vote yes, enthusiastically, for Karen and Robin.
Chris?
I vote yes for Karen and Robin as well.
The motion passes unanimously, and I am done facilitating, and we'll pass it back to Karen.
I will accept the virtual mallet back. Thank you very much. And yeah, thanks everybody for your support. And Robin, I can't wait to work with you. It's gonna be fun.
Oh my goodness. I'm
Did
gonna
you
get
skip
onto the
Alexis?
record that I skipped Alexis.
Okay.
Alexis, would you like to speak
Whoops.
to the record?
Yeah,
that's
thank you. This is Alexis, and I also vote yes.
Good thing I don't often have to facilitate.
No worries at all.
You got, it's hard to facilitate when you're doing about 6 other things. So you did great, Eliza. Thank you. And apologies, Alexis. That was an oversight for sure. That was, I regret. Let's see, next topic is our BES director interviews. So you all saw that the Bureau Commissioner Maps is office is asking and inviting up to 2 members from PUB to participate in the director interviews. We have 3 folks that have expressed interest, Lorraine and Julia and Bob. And what we need to do today as a board is decide which 2 folks we are going to recommend and send that, well, basically just make that decision. So I'll, yeah, hear what you all want to do with this. Julia, please go ahead.
I mean, I am genuinely okay with withdrawing my name because I think that Lorraine and Bob would be an awesome team for this. And I have a lot on my plate, so like I'm okay with withdrawing my name, unless, yeah, I mean, that's I feel like that's an elegant solution.
Tom?
I agree. It sounds like an elegant solution, Julia. I would like to ask, relative to this decision, will the 2 people that are chosen, will they be able to kind of touch base with us either individually or probably not in the public forum, but if any of us have something that we want to share with one of the representatives, are we able, is that something we can do? I guess that's a general question to either you, Karen, or staff, if anybody knows, actually.
Yeah, well, my response off the hip, Tom, is that if 1 PUB member wants to share anything with 2 other PUB members, it's done in a public forum. So, you know, our rule, we can't deliberate outside of a public forum.
Right.
So yeah, that's my off the hip response. And my more somewhat reflective response is that, you know, there has to be a way for the for PUB to communicate our questions, needs, concerns, and so forth to the 2 folks that are participating. I mean, that's because I think that's the point of having PUB representation on the interview panel, is for them to represent PUB. So these 2 folks, you know, need to know what our what our needs are, right, and what our comments and questions are. So but I do think that would have to be done in a public forum.
Oh, definitely. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Bob, go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, I mean, discussing what committee members want to see in a director of BES, or just their general thoughts, is different than deliberating toward a decision. You know, we're not necessarily, you know, it's not saying I want this person over that person. It's simply saying these are the kinds of things that I hope you consider or think about. You know, these are my concerns. And so I'm not, I guess I question, I mean, we can certainly do it through a public forum, and I'm happy to do that, but it also seems like that's just informal kind of thoughts and feedback as opposed to actually deliberating, which is what we can't do. So I just want to flag that.
Yeah, I mean, fair point. I think it may be somewhat open to interpretation what constitutes deliberation. But to your point, somewhat, Bob, there's absolutely nothing that stops one board member from picking up the phone and calling one of those people and saying, hey, this is what my question is, or, you know, or these are the kinds of characteristics that I think are important. But yeah, but I also think there's value in having those things out in a public forum too, for the public to know what our concerns and hopes and dreams are. So I'm sorry, go ahead, Alexis, and then Julia.
Yeah, I think that it would be really good for us to have a little bit of a conversation about like what sorts of questions do we have, or what are the criteria that we would like to help guide our representatives who are participating on the interviews. And I don't know what our how our agendas look over the next few meetings before these get started, but if we might even be, I don't know if the two folks who are going to participate would want to spend some time together, put together a draft, send it to us, and then we could respond and add things on a meeting call, as we've done for a few other things in the past. I think that's been really efficient and helpful, and would be an opportunity to provide insight, even if we're not able to participate in the full process. And then agree with not deliberating about one candidate over another in a public forum doesn't quite seem appropriate, but sharing what our priorities might be and some criteria or questions that we would want to hear answered throughout the process might be a good way for the whole pub to engage.
Yeah, I would just second what she just said. I agree that it'd be great to get something from Lorraine and Bob about like how they're thinking about approaching it. I personally was planning on reaching out to one of them and just sharing my ideas about why I wanted to be on this committee, so that I kind of felt like my ideas were being taken into account. But I think that that's this is what we've done often in the past, is two people prepare something, the pub reviews it, we share our thoughts on it, and then that kind of becomes the guide. So yeah, I'm totally comfortable with that as a plan.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. My past experience on hiring processes, director hiring processes for the city, is that the city uses a pretty rigid format typically, at least in recent years. That may have changed since the last time I was on it. So I think the first thing we really need to get is an understanding of what opportunities we have as participants for input into things like questions and that kind of stuff. So I think it'll be helpful to sort of really get a handle on what our participation in the process embodies, so that we can be responsive to the pub as they give us feedback as well, and so we can describe to them, where we have leverage and where we don't, per se.
Okay. Well, why don't let's take care of the decision that we do need to make today. And then I think we could have a few minutes to think about where we go next with that, and how we make the best use of these two folks. So Julia, or
is it time to make a motion is my question, because if it is, I will happily make a motion to vote to nominate Lorraine and Bob to represent the pub in the BES director interview process.
All right, is there a second for that motion?
I second. This is Alexis.
Alexis, sorry. Okay, that's okay. All right, any further discussion? Tom, please go ahead.
Well, just one item, since Lorraine is not here and we're voting for her, I guess there's a possibility that she may not want to still do it. But so I would like to amend the motion that if she decides she doesn't want to do it, that we vote for Julia to be in that spot if Lorraine, for some reason, doesn't, since she's not here to express whether she is or not. Maybe Julia doesn't want to do that, but that would be my amendment to Julia's motion.
I totally accept that amendment. That's great.
Thank you.
I mean, if it's needed, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Yeah, right. Just if it's needed. Yeah, right. Just in case.
I mean, so I'm hearing you, Tom, and that amendment to the motion would be in order. Sounds like Julia accepted it as a friendly amendment. Since we have we have not received any indication from Lorraine that she is no longer interested. She wasn't able to be at the meeting today and did let us know that she was asking to be excused, but I feel a little I don't know, presumptuous isn't exactly the right word, but almost kind of like suggestive or something. If we say, well, if she's not interested, I mean, I think if Lorraine wasn't interested, I think she would have said that.
I'm
yeah.
just a Murphy's Law kind of guy.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I just think that we could.
I'm voting for Bob and Lorraine. I'm just saying. So anyway, that's okay. Whatever you got, whatever you want. It's
well, all I'm just saying is, like I said, your motion, your amendment is in order. It was accepted, so we can see if there's a second to the amendment, I guess. But I just personally, I just feel like it's unnecessary and maybe a little. I don't think it's necessary, and I'm a little uncomfortable.
No, I hear that.
Yeah.
I totally hear that. We can drop the amendment. That's completely fine, Karen. I think you're right. She probably would have indicated if she couldn't do it. There's no reason to create an unnecessary fail-safe. So like, we do not need to take that amendment. I do not want to extend the amount of time we're talking about this.
Me either. Okay, I withdraw it. In a friendly way, I withdraw it too. Okay, so sorry.
It's okay. We're doing okay for time, so that's all right. Bob, did you have something to say there?
No, Bob said down too.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, I guess, for making an amendment and accepting it and withdrawing it and accepting the withdrawal. So back to the motion on the floor, and it's been made and seconded. Is there any public comment on that before we take a vote? Seeing no public comment, we will go ahead with our vote, and Karen Williams, co-chair voting member, and I vote yes.
Robin Castro, voting member, I vote yes.
Heather, voting member, I vote yes.
Teresa, voting member, I vote yes.
Tom Lipton, I vote yes.
Alexis Rife, voting member, I vote yes.
Bob Salinger, voting member, I'll abstain.
Julia, voting member, I vote yes.
Chris Richard, voting member, yes.
Okay, we didn't miss anybody that time, right? I heard Alexis.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. All right, very good. Motion passes. Lorraine and in absentia, I guess, and Bob, thanks for volunteering for that and for being willing to do that work. And let me just say this so we can move on to our announcements. But I think, the questions you all raised about how we interact and how we make, good use of these two sort of appointees, I guess, we have on the interview panel, I think is worthy of it's worthy and necessary that we talk about how to do that. We're going to talk about our January 3rd meeting coming up, and right, there's never enough time, but I do think it would be helpful if in the meantime, by January 3rd, I look to Eliza and Amy, can we get some information to Bob and Lorraine about, what will be expected of them, what will be the opportunities for input and all of that, that perhaps could be shared then with the board, and we could spend a few minutes at our January 3rd meeting thinking about how we want to use that, right? Whether that's, communicating with board members by interview panel members by email, sending through staff, and then having staff pass it on to them, or if we can have a few minutes at our January 3rd or our second January meeting to have some sort of public discourse about what we want to see in a BES director.
Yeah, we can coordinate with the commissioner's office on that.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everybody. Let's move on to announcements, because I think our announcements are a little bit more
Actually, I would
oh.
pause you to do the Zoom
Okay.
polls for your
Oh, the
January.
Zoom
and March.
polls, right. I knew there was something else. Okay.
Ah.
So speaking of making meetings longer, yes, everybody loves longer meetings. You were, I think, so Eliza, do you have sort of polls ready to launch that we're gonna?
That is
we're gonna-
Amy, and I imagine she does. They were the same polls you saw ahead of time.
Yep.
And read ahead. So we're just gonna go ahead and launch them.
Okay, so let's just launch them. Yep. Everybody get your mouses ready. All right.
And this is just for the voting member or for pub members to respond to. We don't need everybody to respond to these. We'll focus on just the members at this point.
And just to make
Coordinate with
sure,
staff
this
outside of
is,
that.
sorry, this is for January, February, and March, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Sorry, this is Teresa. So, on the first one, there's not an option that says neither any of them works. Not even 3:30 to 5 works for me, or 3 to 5 works to me. I do have conflicting meetings, overlapping about half an hour. So I would like to vote for something that goes earlier than
Then the existing meeting time, the 3:30 to 5.
Yeah, I already have conflicts with the current options, but if we're extending it, like why not have something that's like earlier than what we have right now?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So your conflict is with the later time?
Yeah, I do
Okay.
have another committee meeting that starts at 4:30. And if there's that option to vote for something that ends before 4:30, I would definitely vote for it, but
Okay,
there's
I'll make
not
note
that
of
option,
that.
right? Yeah, thank you.
It might be helpful if people put a hand up or something in the
How many voting or pub members do I have left? 7, 8? Okay, 8.
yeah, it looks like we lost 8. I can't
Yeah,
recall.
Julia had to jump off.
Julie had to leave. Oh, okay.
So I think so we may be done, correct? Is there anybody who's still? Okay, I think I can end it and then we can move on and I can.
And it sounds like, can you share the results with us by email, Amy? Oh, okay. Well, we got it right there. All right.
Okay,
So maybe.
Do you want to look at them now or do you want me to just share it by, why don't I stop sharing it so you can close out the meeting and then we can communicate about the, or I guess it's up to you.
Yeah, it kind of popped up anyway. So I don't
Okay.
know if you're doing that, Amy. I think it just popped up because on my screen anyway.
I will put out that the likelihood of being able to extend the January Tuesday meeting goes down if it's not decided in this meeting, simply because people are going to be absent and email is a very difficult way to get any scheduling done. So
Right. Yeah, okay. So what is the poll say, Amy, about now? Of course, now I did close it, so I don't what was the news on the extending the January 3rd meeting? Certainly hearing what Teresa voted verbally there, that extending that meeting
like
wasn't gonna work for her.
so 8 out of 8 said that 2 hours could work for the January 3rd. So it seemed like there was support for that. It looked like there was more preference for the, let's see. Teresa, though, probably most folks seem to say both options worked. So Teresa's conflict seems to be the biggest conflict with the early, so the earlier start would be the preference.
So Teresa, did I understand, did I hear you say that like 3 to 5 was not earlier enough, that you were proposing something even earlier than 3 to 5 to
Yeah,
that it would accommodate a 2-hour meeting for you?
yeah, for Tuesdays. I didn't get to finish my vote, so I did not vote. Yeah, but on Tuesdays, I do have another committee, long-lasting committee that starts at 4:30. So I would like to propose it to start at least 2:30
Okay,
if we are going to extend our Tuesdays meetings.
okay. So a 2:30 to 4:30 would work for you on Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's see. Can we do a show of hands for how could folks, and I realize we lost Julia, but could we do a show of hands for folks that could do 2:30 to 4:30 on Tuesday, January 3rd? And I don't think I can raise my hand, but I think I could. I know I have some work meetings then, but I think I could make that work. Okay, everybody can make it work at least.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, all right. Well, why don't we plan on 2:30 to 4:30 on Tuesday, January 3rd. And yeah, and we'll cross the other Tuesday bridges when we when we get there. But great. Thanks, Christopher. All righty. Good job, guys. Thank you. Announcements. So Bob, I know we had some time already on some of your thoughts about BES director, but was there anything else you wanted to share with the group about that situation?
No, not at this time. Thanks.
Thank you. And Tom, a few minutes if you wanted to share with the group any of your sort of takeaways from the conversation you had with Farshad, and any recommendations you have.
I'd actually encourage you all to, because we're at 12:29, to close out the meeting and realize that you'll next be meeting in 2023.
Could I just make a quick comment? I just want to say that it was a very rewarding conversation. Farshad gave me a lot of good information. I'm going to put something together for a future meeting because I do want to make some recommendations to the board that we could deliberate and then decide whether we want to, whatever we want to do from that. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Tom. That would be helpful. And just for the board's reminder, this was particular to the Tryon Creek project. And again, I think opportunities for engagement on particular topics will, come up in our context of our budget review and deep dives. So very good. Thanks, Eliza. I missed the slide there? We were just looking ahead to January 3rd, which we know is going to be a little bit earlier, we think. So continue conversation from today. If there are more questions about BES foundational drivers, tree program updates, and both bureaus' presentations to prep for budget. So just quick question, are we expecting another BES presentation on January 3rd? I was thinking we were just going to be hearing from the Water Bureau.
I'm not sure. It depends on the time and breakdown breakdown, all we've done with BES so far is the foundational stuff from today. We haven't done the budget stuff yet, so.
Understood. Yeah. I guess I was thinking maybe our January 3rd, we would have kind of a similar context setting presentation from the Portland Water Bureau. I realize, it's not exactly apples to apples. There aren't foundational drivers, but more of that context for what's driving their budget priorities. But we can,
yeah,
Robin, you and I can talk about that
yep.
for January 3rd. Okay, thanks. I just wanted to take a quick look at that. Well, great. Well, let's go ahead and close out our meeting, and we can adjourn and end the recording.